All right, Ajay. So, thanks for joining and agreeing to be part of this editorial interview. As I mentioned, we've started an editorial publication called Machine Visionaries, and the idea behind this editorial is to um, interview and feature leading, what we call machine visionaries. It's a play on the word for machine vision. Basically, people in three different industry segments who've been using machine vision and AI and kind of tell their story.
Okay.
And the segments that we're covering are in manufacturing, machine building, which includes companies like yourself, machine building system integrators, those who basically provide solutions to manufacturing,
Yeah.
as well as startups. So companies that have just emerged, and there's a lot of emerging companies in AI and machine vision both, which have come up in the last 2 years, and so we want to feature them as well.
Okay.
So once again, welcome and thanks for spending your time.
So,
Right. So I just wanted to start off by asking you about some background about yourself. What got you started in industrial automation, robotics, and how did DiFACTO really come about? So if you could share your story with us, we'd love to hear that.
okay. So, I'm a mechanical engineer, so I finished my bachelor's degree from UVC, University Visvesvaraya College of Engineering in Bangalore. So I'm a mechanical engineer. And then after that, I immediately wanted to go abroad for my further studies, and then I was accepted into Clemson University. And there they had a good robotics program, and especially related to apparel manufacturing, so things like shirts. And so it was the challenge was to design end of arm tooling and end effectors to handle this flexible material. I was part of that research team at Clemson University, and that's so that my master's thesis was also in design of an end effector for handling apparel fabric. It was a U.S. Department of Defense project. So that was way back, and then I decided that I want to, come back to, India and work with our DRDO, which at that time that was the only organization which had something related to robotics. There's an organization called Center for AI and Robotics, Center for Artificial Intelligence and Robotics. So I was part of that team there, and then we did some work with a new kind of manipulator design. So we also did some work for the LCA, light combat aircraft, inspection system. So that is how my career in this field started. Then I moved away from government and worked with some private companies like Intel Tech and then ABB and Fanuc in their um, robotics groups. So I was with ABB and Fanuc from 94 to 2006, and then at Fanuc I was leading their robotics group. Then the economy was expanding, and there was a requirement to have solution providers. So myself and my partner, we decided to start up DiFACTO, and that's how DiFACTO came into being in late 2006, early 2007. And then we started doing work for some of the automotive OEMs in India. Maruti was one of our earliest customers and continues to be our biggest customer. So we have a lot of other clients as well: Honda Cars, Toyota, their tier one suppliers, Dr. Reddy's Labs, LM Wind Power, and then some companies in the solar power manufacturing areas. So, and we have so we're built up now for over 13 years. DiFACTO has been as one of the leading automation suppliers, solution providers in India.
Very nice. So it's been 13 years. That's a quite a depth of experience you must have had. And so basically, you've always been in robotics. So you started off, you did your masters, and you've always had a passion and interest in the field. And so you kind of continued that on
Right,
all through your education as well as now in your career as well.
right,
So
yeah.
that's a lot of depth, I think, that you must have developed in the
It's been a very
technology.
interesting journey. That's all I can say. I mean, it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure. And based on this, so since you said you've had that depth of experience in robotics, what would you say has been sort of, if you look back on your earlier days when you actually got introduced to the technology and now, what would you
Mhm.
say are the top three, things, disruptive changes that you've seen in robotics, right? What was being done back then, and if you compare to things as it is being done today.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, the field has changed dramatically, right? I mean, a lot of new applications. Earlier, it used to be that only welding used to be the main application. Automotive spot welding and MIG welding. Those were the two main applications, apart from, you can say, painting. So it was almost exclusively automotive at that time. Now, the usage in the industries that have adopted robotics have expanded dramatically. So every industry now uses robotics in some way or the other. Every manufacturing industry. So it could be consumer goods, it could be energy sector, it could be medicine, pharma, food industry, consumer goods. All kinds of industries have adopted robotics, and everyone feels the benefits of using robots. So that's a very big change that has happened. Especially, I'm talking about Indian industry. Of course, overseas it's been there for a while. So you can say that probably we are lagging behind by about 10 years, but we're catching up very fast. Um, and I would say that we would, in the next few years, with all the expected manufacturing that is expected to come into India, we'll be one of the leading users of automation technologies. On the technology side, industrial robots have undergone lot of improvements in their capabilities in terms of their efficiency, energy efficiency, as well as speeds, safety, um, and the productivity. Okay, so and overall, you can say the cost of robots have also come down over the years. So that has led to a larger adoption. And then the use of sensors like machine vision. Earlier, vision was a very exotic kind of thing that was used in very rare kind of requirements. But now, vision is being used very routinely in many applications. It's become an indispensable part of automation. Um, then, of course, a new thing about cobots, collaborative robots, humans and robots working together. Mobility, robots working on mobile robots with the AGVs, things like that. So, a lot of things have happened and it's continuing to evolve, right? So, it's a very exciting time to be in this field, actually.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, lot of disruptive changes. And you mentioned one interesting point you brought up. So, where you say India is about a decade behind
Mm.
advanced manufacturing companies, and we hear that a lot.
Yeah.
And I know you also have a presence in the US, and you've done a lot of projects in the US and abroad as well. So what would you say are some of the key differentiators that, when you do a project in the US and we do projects in India, what do you see are the key differences between, your customers, and how, that sort of change, influences the automation industry here in India, which which is possibly a factor why we are still 10 years behind.
Okay, when I just want to clarify, when I said 10, we are 10 years behind, I would say that we are using the same technology, or we are at the same technical level as the Western countries. We are not, using any, developing any obsolete solutions. When I say we are 10 years behind, I would say in the adoption. Okay, so if you look at the density of robots used in manufacturing in India compared to the West, then I would say we are about 10 years behind. Okay. So, but we are catching up, and we will, reach those levels pretty soon. So it was more in the context of the adoption of the technology, right? So we are using the same technology that the manufacturing companies in the West use. For example, the latest machine vision, all the products which are available to the West is also available to us today. And the products are launched almost simultaneously all over the world now. So everything is available to us now. So where there is a difference between the adoption, there is, because obviously the labor cost in India is so low, and labor costs in the Western countries are high. So the return on investment for automation is much faster there. So it's easy for them to adopt robots. So the adoption rate is much higher there. So that is where I think we are still to catch up. But I mean, the signs are very encouraging. In fact, I saw a statistic published by the IFR, International Federation of Robotics. It's a non-profit organization which records all the statistics of robot usage worldwide. And they say that I think in 2017, 2018, the growth of robots in India was probably the highest, one of the highest in the world. Okay, so we are catching up very fast. And obviously, that's a very good sign for every one of us who is in this field, right? So, yeah, I think I mean it's only a matter of time now. It's a matter of time before we are able to catch up with them.
So the cost of labor is your primary factor, you feel, why we are still behind.
Yes, yes.
And
Yeah.
and declining costs of automation, robotic products, as well as, I think, the labor cost also are increasing. So you feel now we are kind of at the cusp, at the
Yep.
tipping point, so to speak, where you
Yes.
see that there'll be
There'll be much
wider adoption.
right. Yeah.
Interesting.
So engineering costs obviously are lower in India, so the cost of automation is also lower in India.
Yeah.
So it makes I mean justifying automation is becoming easier. Still not as easy as in the West or in the more industrialized countries, but it's we're doing all right. I think. We're on the right path.
Got it. Got it. Thanks for the insights there. And you mentioned, though, so the clarification, I think, is an important distinction, where you said that India, or DiFACTO, from your experience, has been using the latest technologies, and it's as competitive or as comparable to any of the advanced manufacturing
Right.
companies.
Yeah.
And yet, but you still have the challenge of adoption, right? So where the market is smaller, it's much probably harder to sell advanced technologies to a smaller market compared to somebody who's doing it in Europe or Switzerland.
Yeah.
But how do you still keep abreast of the latest technology innovations? How do you still kind of, knowing that some of these advanced technologies sometimes are expensive, and they may not see a foreseeable, they may not see a sizable opportunity, but how do you still motivate yourself? How do you still make sure you keep ahead of technology to be competitive
Right.
internationally?
So yeah, one of the key drivers is of course our customers and our Indian customers. They are abreast of the latest technology. They visit trade shows. They see what's going on around there. So they come back and they say, "Hey, this is what we have seen. So we want this." Okay, so the customers are of course a driving major driving point of the new technologies. And de facto ourselves, we send our engineers to trade shows. We go to Automatica. We were supposed to go to IMTS this year, and a lot of shows got cancelled. And then of course we keep visiting trade shows in India as well. We participate in that, so we get to hear what and see what's going on in the world. So I mean the developments that are happening at a basic technology level, like for example, machine vision. I mean, the developments that are happening are quite amazing, and it's in year to year we can see huge jumps being made. Okay. So, which is obviously good thing, and we try to see how we can utilize that in our solutions. So trade shows, and of course webinars. We attend the webinars. Our suppliers, they keep meeting us, so we see. I mean, we have suppliers coming in and they say, hey, this new product just got launched, and this is it's got these new amazing features. So why don't you take a look at it? And then, yeah, I mean, uh, we start looking at it, and then we find a way where we could start using. So things like IoT products or components, then industrial PC based control systems, and as I mentioned, vision, 2D vision, 3D vision, um, mobile mobility, servo technology. So all these and sensors and safety equipment, all these things we absolutely get the latest information, and then we see what makes sense to incorporate them into our offerings to customers.
Fantastic. And so given the market, I mean, we've seen a very interesting couple of years, right? So there's been a big growth stage in manufacturing, and then there was a slump in the industry. The automotive sector was slowing down,
Yeah.
and then now COVID happens, and so things are, it never seems to stop. The excitement never seems to stop.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to de facto and the robotic industry or the industrial automation industry, what would you say are the top three focus areas for you right now, right? Which um, you're planning for the future.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, right now, I mean, honestly speaking, with this COVID situation, it's a matter of, survival. We need to survive this terrible economic phase where there's absolutely there has been no income for the past 2 months almost. Um, so that is number one. That is the number one priority right now. But that is a very short term thing, and we believe that COVID will run its course, and hopefully we follow the same path as the rest of the world that we are seeing in Europe and in US and China, where after some time the curve starts flattening out. So hopefully we start seeing that soon, and then we start getting back to normalcy. But the earliest that will happen is by probably by some estimates, and which I also think is quite realistic, by the end of the year at the earliest, right? And so that's the challenge, is to just keep afloat, retain our talent, and make sure that we use this as an opportunity to learn. So, the lockdowns were a fantastic opportunity to attend a lot of webinars and things like that. And a lot of learning happened, which is a good thing. Apart from that, the other priorities, looking at a little bit more medium term, we would like to use more of these technologies like IIoT, machine vision, cobots. That is what the market seems to be moving towards, and we would like to be at the forefront of adoption of those technologies. So we are starting to see some projects in that. We've done a couple of projects already related to IIoT and mobile robots and cobots. And then, as you mentioned, our subsidiary in the US, they have a lot of very interesting projects and very interesting problems that their customers throw to them, and we come up with some innovative solutions. So now adopting these new technologies, and then on the business side, we of course we this crisis has kind of forced us to look at efficiencies and see how we can cut down on waste and become more efficient in terms of engineering, more innovative in terms of our designs, so that DiFACTO as a company gets recognized as an innovative solution provider. So those are some of the things, that we are looking at.
Got it. So survival for the short term, and innovation and technology adoption, medium and long term. That's the only way to go. Yeah, I mean, I also heard very interesting interview by, you know, Elon Musk and others, where they said the only the only skill that's really relevant, everything else is going to go, obsolete. But the only skill that's going to be relevant is adoption. How you can adopt and learn, because everything else is kind of getting commoditized and it's getting disrupted. So I think that's really holds true to what you're also saying in your priorities. So good to hear. So speaking of this, you mentioned some of the areas of technologies, and as our publication is focused on machine vision and AI, and you mentioned those machine vision especially a couple of times. What would you say from, again, your vast experience? When did you encounter machine vision as a viable solution, and can you tell us, about your journey using machine vision? Where you first started to use it, what your experience was back then, and perhaps what you think is the state of the art today when it comes to how it's applicable for you.
Right. So, I think we did our first, first requirement, or where we thought that vision could be used in a project was about 10 years ago. Okay. And we did look at, I think, 2D vision for a guidance, application. The parts would come on a conveyor and then, stop, and then the robot would pick up the part and based on the orientation. So we eliminated some expensive picturing there. So that was probably one of our first applications there. Then we have done, visual tracking nowadays, where parts are moving on the conveyor. The robot identifies the part and then sees, also simultaneously scans the barcode and sees if it's acceptable, not acceptable. So, the technology has become faster, obviously, with higher processing speeds, and the technology on the hardware also, and the software as well. So it's become easier to adopt now some of the applications that we have seen. It's pretty easy to use those visual tools, define the part of interest, identify the feature that we need to identify. It's very fast, and now we are also seeing 2D, 3D vision kind of applications, random bin picking. We have not implemented it yet, but we are seeing a lot of interest in it. We have done some trials with our, especially in the US, for some of the customers there. So that's becoming. I mean, we are seeing a lot of vision being used in almost all our projects in the US, and in India, it's now. It used to be like 5% or maybe less than that for projects used to have some camera, but now it's probably about 20-25%. There is a camera. There's some some thing to be inspected or some part to be identified. So yeah, I mean this is going to be. I mean, I can see that in like what's happening in the US in about a few years time. Almost every project will have, I mean, an automation project. I'm talking about automation. I mean, I'm not even talking about what you guys do, which is machine vision on a more general scale. So on an automation level, there's going to be a big increase in usage.
Great. That's encouraging to hear. And you mentioned that a couple of use cases where talking about robotic guidance as well as bin picking
Yeah,
as being some of the use cases that you've used.
yeah.
But in general, where do you see vision sort of adding value to robotics? What do you see as the key driver which really adds value to you as a automation company, and then in turn adds value to your end users? So what are some of the areas you feel?
So, um, yeah, I like that I had briefly alluded one of the earliest projects was where we used vision to get away with expensive tooling. So I think that's
Yeah,
going to be a big thing where we don't need to be very. And the other thing which is happening today is almost all manufacturers are having multiple parts to be manufactured, and they know it's the changeover between variants of the models is so fast. So sometimes it's not even batch production. It could change from one to the next. So it could be a batch of one. So when if you have to do the tooling change for that, it's not going to work. So it has to be a very flexible system. So that's where vision comes in, identifies a part to be processed. It could be, I don't know, it could be a simple handling project, or it could be some material removal project where you're doing some grinding or cutting or whatever. And then you on the fly you can identify the part, change the program in the robot, do the processing, and then you have that tremendous flexibility that can come in because of machine vision. Okay, so that's where I think we are heading towards, because of the customers are having to change their designs so quickly, and having to have their production lines as flexible to meet market requirements, right? So it could be a change from day to day, and that's where vision can play a very big role. I mean, it will play a very big role in enabling that to happen.
interesting. Yeah, so it allows the flexibility
Yeah,
because you don't need customized jigs, you don't need to change
exactly,
processes. It's just software that can be configured, and that can, in effect, enable that change when there is some changeover.
exactly.
Very interesting, very interesting.
Yeah,
And when it comes to vision, in terms of implementation, so I know you work with partners, we've done a project together. And so how do you, make these decisions in terms of, firstly, whether this project requires vision, and secondly, whether, what sort of balance do you draw between doing things in house, how much expertise you need to do in house, and what are the things that you would, want to partner with, right?
yeah,
And so how do you make such decisions, and how do you kind of implement that to make it a success?
yeah. So just to give you a recent example where we had a customer having about 10 models of a part that needed to be ground using a robot. So they were all coming in randomly on a conveyor. So one way to do it would have been to use um, a mechanical sensor, to sensor on an axis to identify the part, and then give that feedback to the robot. But then what we said was, let's look at if we can use vision, which can also give in some additional information to us, in terms of the orientation of the part and things like that. Not only to identify the part itself, but to also see how the part is oriented. So this
The
lead,
sensor, just to clarify, the sensor was just to detect the presence of the part, right?
right? Yeah,
That
yeah,
was what it was doing before. Okay.
right. So with the decision to look at the camera, then we found that we could do a lot more things with the camera, which would eliminate some of the processes downstream, okay, and reduce the time that would be taken to do the processing. So in that case, it made economic sense to use a camera for that application. Okay. Now, when we decided to do that, obviously we are not the experts. We are complete automation solution providers, but guys like you who are the experts who know this subject. So we talked to a couple of them, and they came in with their cameras. And I believe in vision. Correct me if I'm wrong. The most important thing is to do the trials with the actual part, and it's easy to do those trials, right? And that's the beauty of it. We can very quickly do a setup, do some trials, check on the actual customer part, and see whether the vision is performing as we expect it to. And then we know that these are the parameters that we need to set, lighting, and or the focus, the focal length, and the lens that is to be used, and the background, and things like that. So all those things are then set beforehand. And then then we approach the project with our 90% confidence that, yeah, this will work. So then it becomes a commercial decision. But that's the way we approach, selecting a vision partner for a particular project. And then, of course, if the partner has already worked on something similar before, that's obviously a big bonus. And the ability of the partner to provide a service at where the customer is located. Some of our customers are located all over the country. If I'm talking only within India, and we have customers located all over the country. So the ability to have local service support in all those locations, that plays a very important role as well. So obviously, so yeah, technology, support, price, these would be the criteria.
Key factors. But you did say that, but you do need to have some amount of expertise, maybe not to implement,
Yeah,
but you do need to also have in-house expertise to be able to drive that project to a successful conclusion, right?
right. Yeah,
And so how do you draw the balance? Like what do you feel are the skills that your team and your company needs,
yeah.
and and what are the things that you then look for the partner to?
Right. So from our side, what we need is, the ability to configure the requirement and explain that requirement to the solution provider. So it's more like a project management activity, where we clearly explain the variants which are there, which are coming from the background, the environment, and the requirement of the customer in terms of the accuracies and the technical specifications. And then we set those criteria to determine the success of the vision application. And then we check that, at our end, what we need is to make sure that we have the adequate expertise to check that the criteria are met or not, okay, and rank them. And then, of course, moving to the execution phase, yeah, the partner will be there to help us, but then at some point of time, we need to take over, right? So we need to take over and be able to make some changes, make some tweaks, configuration, parameters change. So those kind of things, we are developing that expertise in our company. We have a small team, which I think you have met also earlier. So they are able to do all that. They are able to manage that. It's only when we get into some really some new applications, that's when we work with the partner to bring in their expertise.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah, it's really a balance. You really need to know enough about the technology to drive it to a successful implementation. But at the same time, you need to know where the limitations are, so that you then
Exactly. So
have that.
we don't have the program, the software development expertise in house. So that's where we depend on the partner to have that either as a ready built libraries, or some customization that the partner can do to help us out with a particular requirement. Yeah, and then the rest of it, and we expect that the partner would train us on how to troubleshoot or make some configuration changes, so we are able to support our customers quickly, because the customers can't afford to have a downtime on their production lines just because one part of it is not working. So we would expect that we are adequately trained and we have the expertise to solve problems, preferably over telephone, in a few minutes.
Yeah, a few minutes, as you said. So yeah, you're right. It is. It's these SLAs that we're seeing today in production are very, very strict in terms of the downtime that is allowed, production downtime. Every minute is a huge expense.
Yes.
And so service is a key component. Um, Great, great. So coming to that, right? So then, given the opportunities, and also, it is at the end of the day a complex technology. And what would you say are the top challenges you faced in adopting vision, and which you feel are some things which um, you know other users of vision, or even providers of vision, should be aware of, based on your experience?
Okay. Initially, it was a very basic stuff like, understanding what technologies are available, in terms of 2D vision or line scan cameras. So we just thought that vision is a camera, and then if you have a camera, everything is solved. But then we got into the nitty gritties, and we found that there's a lot more to vision than just camera. So there is the processing element, there's the software and the configuration, then the hardware, and then how you set up the lighting, many things, which and how you define the part. So these were the things that we learned along the way. Okay. So the challenge initially was to get an understanding of the technologies which are available in vision, under the broad umbrella of vision. What are the technology? What are the cases that have already been solved, and how have they solved it? Then what are the costs involved in doing that? So these things were unknown. So I think many customers are at the same level that we were a few years back, where think that machine vision is something that is very complex. It's not for us. It needs it needs experts. I don't have software people in my company. So those are the kind of fears that people have when they want to adopt machine vision. Okay, but then I think, I mean, I know that's part of your um, what your role in the industry, that you are trying to increase the knowledge level and spread the knowledge around. And I'm sure this all the initiative that you have taken with your magazine will surely go a long way in doing that. I saw one very interesting newsletter from you guys, and all that is definitely building up knowledge levels, awareness levels, and that will, I think, take away a lot of the fear and what machine vision can do or cannot do, and then people will be more open to adopting it. Okay. So that is one of the aspects. And then once you get into the technology, then of course, as I mentioned, you need to find a reliable partner or company or group of companies that you can work with for different applications. I know that some companies have specialized in even in machine vision. There's a lot of specialization. There's some who specialize in surface applications, some who specialize in intelligence, artificial intelligence. I know you guys do a lot of things in artificial intelligence, and so those are the there are some companies who are more general and they do very good. They have excellent products when it comes to the simpler applications. So yeah, you need to understand who can do what, and then look at their capabilities, and then decide to work with the right partner, because that's very important.
So education, knowing about what vision can do and can't do, and knowing the basics
Yeah.
and finding the right partner are the top challenges you face. What about in terms of implementation itself? Once you've implemented, what are the challenges you've faced when it comes to, accuracy, or be it support, or, reliability? Have you faced any challenges there?
Uh, to be honest, if we do a thorough job on the process upfront, the selection process and the trials and all that, and then we know that things are working. Once we do that, that's, I think, 90% of the job done. Then implementation becomes actually quite easy, and once it is set in its place, then I mean, the technologies now are so amazing that it's very reliable. We hardly get a call from any customer saying, "Hey, your camera is not working." I don't recall. We have done a few systems. I would say at least 10 or 12 systems in India. I don't coming in saying, "Hey, your camera is not working or your vision is giving us problems." No.
Great, great. So you probably have really learned and applied, the things that you said, which is to, plan upfront, and probably your industrial automation experience in planning and designing, all that takes, has helped you in doing the same for vision as well.
Yeah, I'm sure it has. At the same time, I know that we have not explored the full capabilities of
Done
machine,
very too many advanced or challenging.
because we keep getting thrown new challenges every day. I mean, I'm talking about machine vision based applications. So a lot of customers say, can you just take a look at this and tell me you can inspect this part, or I want these parts are coming in a bin. Can your robot pick it up with a camera? Then or we have a customer saying, I have a process where the robot is laying a glue bead. I want to know whether that bead is laid correctly or not, the right volume. So can you give me a vision solution for doing that? I mean, we keep getting new challenges thrown at us almost every day. So it tells me that, I mean, we are just scratching the tip of the iceberg, really. Is a big requirement that we are. So we have a long way to go to build up our knowledge and expertise and being able to implement things much faster.
And what prevents you from taking these challenges up, when they come? Is it, cost viability? Is it implementation?
I think it's our own ability to implement. I mean, our own limitations in terms of the expertise that we have within our company, and we are gradually scaling up as we move, but we probably need to do it much faster. And that's where working with reliable partners is going to be the key for us. And yeah, I mean, we have at least 3 or 4 vision problems that we need to solve at any given time. So, I mean, we are reaching there, probably not at the speed that I would like, but I understand things. It's not easy to build up that expertise overnight, but I'm sure we'll reach there soon enough.
Yeah, the technology is definitely getting so much easier to work with. Costs are coming down.
Yes.
Awareness amongst customer, the fear, as you mentioned, has considerably reduced. People were very fearful about adopting new technologies, especially when it came to vision. And so now I think that has reduced quite substantially, at least from what I've seen.
Yeah.
And I think I would definitely agree with you that we're scratching the surface and there's so much more that needs to be done,
Right.
especially coming in the near future.
Yeah.
And so, speaking of which, what do you think, are the exciting either trends as you see with vision as it applies to robotics or AI, whether you've explored artificial intelligence or, what exposure you had, what do you see as the things that really, where you've either read it in a publication or you've encountered it or you've read it in some, newspaper headline online nowadays, which you think are really going to be game changers for your industry?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, there are so many actually that I can think of. I mean, one example that comes to mind is when I mentioned about mobile robots. So the navigation of the robots. When we are talking about driverless cars, but that's okay. That's something which obviously we are not involved in. But mobile robots in the industrial environment, where you have an AGV carrying some parts, and you need to figure out if there's an obstruction, and then figure out how to find a path around that obstruction. So things like that is where we think that vision will play. Visual technologies will play a very big role, and that's going to be quite big, I think. Inspection, where you talked about AI. So we had a customer come in last week with some parts, and he said they have 10 people who just take the part and examine it from all sides, and then they say whether it's go or no go, and then they have to reject it. So they said, can you have vision? Can you do some automation on that? And then we had to look at different technologies to do that. And that's where AI was first talked about within our company. How do we how do we
First talked
implement?
about when was that?
I mean,
This year?
last couple of weeks ago. I mean, I would say couple of
Okay.
weeks. Yeah,
Oh, really? Okay. So that's, yeah,
recent. So they want. We said, see, the expertise that the operator has in deciding whether a part can be accepted or not. So how do we build that into the vision system, right? So obviously the human has expertise, and he's I mean, there's a number of parameters that he's going through in his mind to determine if he passes this or rejects it. So how can we build that into our automation system? So we are, I mean, fascinating that now it's possible to do that. It was earlier maybe difficult to do. now it's this technology available. So AI is available very cheaply now. Artificial intelligence. It used to be something very, very fancy that only somebody like IBM or Microsoft would do. But now, I mean, it's becoming even startups. A lot of startups in Bangalore, guys like yourself, so doing a lot of work in that area.
Got it. Got it. So AGVs, automated or autonomous
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
robots and AI.
And now they're called AMRs. We don't call them AGVs, autonomous mobile robots.
AMRs, okay.
I mean, you no longer have a guided path. You use the coordinates of the system, navigate around, and then obviously use intelligence to avoid obstacles on the fly. So all that, that's coming in. That's coming into the shop floor. It's there in the warehouses now. So a lot of warehousing, Amazon and Flipkart and all of them, they use these mobile robots a lot. But adoption in manufacturing is still at the beginning. But that will be another area which is going to become very big.
Great.
Avoiding all those forklifts and people driving forklifts with the diesel fumes and all that, and safety issues related to that. So if you have these autonomous mobile robots with safety scanners around them, um, moving around and delivering parts as and where required on the manufacturing line, that will eliminate quite a few of the manual operations there.
Got it. And I wanted to just wind up, with the interview by asking you, what if somebody who's starting off in their journey with vision, and given that you first had your experience 10 years back, what would you probably say? What advice would you give them to say when they're starting off vision? What advice would you give when they look for something?
Yeah. So if they're, if they're obviously if they're solution providers like us, I would say, evaluate technology very carefully, understand your requirement, and evaluate the technologies which are available. Things are changing very fast, so don't go by what you have seen even 1 or 2 years back. See what's available today. Do your homework. Uh, select the partners that you want to work with carefully. Ensure that they're able to support you. Build up a small in-house team. Develop that expertise, like we talked about earlier, to understand the basics of the technology and how it's to be adopted and how you can support that. And then you're on your way. I mean, you don't need it's something. You don't need large resources to get started. Um, it's all available. It's available in India. It's available in Bangalore. It's available in almost all the cities now in India. So um, don't be afraid.
Very nicely said. Yeah. So thanks, Ajay. It's all those are the questions that we had. It was really insightful. I enjoyed speaking with you, and I think there was a lot of insights that people can take away from your journey, both from robotics, AI, and machine vision. When you put the three together, all these three are really hot, trending topics, and I think we touched upon all three.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there'll be a lot of people who can learn from this interview and the experience. And for those of you who are watching, I'll be putting a link down here below. So defacto.com, right, Ajay? So that's the website, and they're one of the pioneers in robotics. And as Ajay mentioned, his roots right from his university all the way to what he's doing now is been in robotics. He's been one of the, on the cutting edge of technology. And they have 3 locations, am I right?
Yes.
India, the US, and Europe.
No, I mean, in India, we have 3 locations, and in the US, 1 location. We don't have a office in Europe.
In Europe, okay. So 3 locations in India and the US as well. So thank you, Ajay.
You're most welcome, Raghav. Thank you.